Welcome to Tales of Fae and Folk, dear friends, and this time we are going to look at some scary fairy creatures, ones who we would rather definitely not meet on the pathway. Prepare yourselves and be brave fellow wanderers, and let's travel hand in hand together. As we have learned over time wandering the fairy world together, these beguiling creatures are very dual-natured. They do not adhere to human norms of good or bad. Fairy folk are as wild as the wind and as changeable as the weather, and just as unpredictable. And yet there are some fairy folk who don't seem to have any redeeming features at all. Their characters are frightening and malevolent. They prey on the vulnerable and innocent. Of course, some humans have the same propensity towards the darkness, but these fairy creatures are truly monster-like in both visage and intent. So, holding hands together and treading very quietly, let's walk down the pathway of the darker aspect of the fairy world and meet some of the dangerous creatures who live there. Black Annis. Black Annis, or Black Agnes, and Black Anna, is an English folklore fairy from the county of Leicestershire. Bad and witch-like, said to be blue-faced and iron-clawed, claws that she used to dig out her cave home known as Black Annis's Bower Close. She hunts for human prey, especially children. Her home can be found in a cave in the Dane Hills area of Leicestershire, where a great ancient oak once guarded the mouth, a tree she will hang from and snatch unsuspecting travellers. As night falls, she prepares for the night hunt, for lambs or children, humans snatched through windows that have been left open, or lambs from the farms and barns. These she would devour and tan the hides to leather, which she would cure by hanging them in the trees, finally hanging these pieces from her waist as a skirt. She is a fairy of warning, being used as a threat to naughty children who would not behave themselves. Cottages in the county were built with smaller windows to prevent Black Annis from creeping in and snatching the children, and one ear in the household was always kept listening for the strange loud grinding of her teeth as she approached the cottages. Time to lock the doors and windows, keep safe by the warmth of the fireside altogether, and be quiet and still until she had passed. Her howls could be heard far, far away, miles, it was said, bringing terror and gooseflesh. Earliest known records of Black Annis are from around the 1700s, when a piece of land was written down as Black Annis Bower Close. So where does her actual legend originate? Various folklorists and researchers have put forward ideas that her story has come to us from ancient history, from the Celtic Anu or Danu, India's Kali, Greek Demeter, Egypt's Isis and Hathor, the Gallic Kalach, and possibly the sacrificial victims of young ones to some of these ancient goddesses, especially regarding the aspect of a cave with a sentinel tree. However, the brilliant Professor Ronald Hutton puts forwards another suggestion from an earlier suggestion by Robert Graves in the 1800s, that Black Annis could be based upon a real person. This was Agnes Scott, a medieval anchoress, or maybe a black uniformed Dominican nun and carer at a local leper colony in that part of Leicestershire. Agnes was Irish by birth, moving to the area and living in a cave there, buried in Swithland Church. Over time it is thought that the memory of Agnes fused with earlier fears of children wandering near the caves, and over time she became a cautionary figure to keep the children safe and close at home. The poet John Hayrick, writing in the 1800s, gave us a vision of Black Annis that has become the accepted norm for today's fairy tale and folklore lovers. 'Tis said the soul of mortal man recoiled to view Black Annis's eye so fierce and wild. Vast talons foul with human flesh there grew, in place of hands and features livid blue, glared in her visage while her obscene waist warm skins of human victims close embraced. Not without terror they the cave survey, where hung the monstrous trophies of her sway. 'Tis said that in the rock large rooms were found, scooped with her claws beneath the flinty ground. Strangely, Black Annis is also associated with cats, that she could shapeshift into a horrible, monstrous cat-like creature. As this form she is known as Cat Anna, and was believed to live in the cellars underneath Leicester Castle, hidden passageways leading from here to her cave home at the Dane Hills. A local ritual would be performed at the end of winter, on what was called Black Monday. A dead cat soaked in aniseed brought to the cave and dragged along in front of howling vicious hunting dogs, from her home to that of the Mayor of Leicester. Happily this custom was gone by the early 1880s, and the Dane Hills Fair took its place in its stead. Sadly though, the place of her home started to be covered by human housing after the First World War, and what was once a wasteland is now completely built over. However, the small cave still remains. Raw head and bloody bones. This truly awful creature's folklore is prevalent in two countries, both the UK and the USA, and his first mention is as far back as roughly 1548. He is also known as Rawhead, Tommy Rawhead, and just Bloody Bones, and is another fellow used to keep naughty children in check, as written of by John Locke in 1693. Mainly in the UK, he can be found in my home county of Lancashire, and also the neighbouring one of Yorkshire. In the United States, he is mostly found in the southern states, where he obviously migrated over time and stories grew. He is said to be an evil water spirit, found waiting for his prey in deep dark ponds, threatening seas and pits and deep ditches where rainwater and floodwater have gathered to form dangerous traps. Folklorist Ruth Tongue, and yes, I know some of her research is now considered dubious, but hey, if only one person has a belief or ritual, then that to me is personal folklore, so let's not completely condemn Ruth Tongue or dismiss her work. Anyway, she told that in Somerset folklore, he lived in a deep dark cupboard, usually under the stairs. If you were heroic enough to peep through a crack, you would get a glimpse of the dreadful crouching creature with blood running down his face, seated waiting on a pile of raw bones that had belonged to children who told lies or said bad words. And if you dared to peep through the keyhole, he got you anyway. Redcap. Redcap is sometimes known as Faerie, Bloody Cap and Redcomb, a truly evil fairy creature living on the Scottish and English borderland, where ruined castles can be found, a legacy of the many clan and country battles that happened in that area. He is described as short, stocky, older looking, with long poking out teeth, very thin fingers with talons instead of nails. His eyes glow fiery red, lank hair flows down his shoulders. On his feet he wears iron boots, and in his hand is a pikestaff, and on his head a cap, stained red with the blood of his victims. And this grotesque piece of clothing is where his name comes from. Unwary travellers in the borderlands would often find a place to sleep in the ruins of castles or homes. Redcap would dispatch them by throwing rocks onto the sleeping stranger, and then he would dip his cap in their blood. More killings must take place in order to keep the stain on the red cap red. His appetite for taking life is insatiable. Should his cap dry out, Redcap will die himself. Nothing frightens Redcap. No man is strong enough to give him fear. Only words from the Bible or holding a cross towards him can drive him back and away. And at this he will scream in horror and disappear in a burst of flames, a disgusting single tooth left behind where once he stood. Blackett Tower, a ruined fort on the borders of Dumfriesshire, once owned by the Bell family, is said to have a ghost named Old Redcap. William Scott Irving wrote of him in the poem Fair Helen. A terrible figure holding a bloody dagger underneath the moon. Probably the most well-known legend of Redcap is that of his relationship with William de Soulis, Laird Soulis of Hermitage Castle, near Newcastleton in Roxburghshire. The castle was originally built by a Nicholas de Soulis around 1240. William was living here by 1320. Laird Soulis was known to be a sorcerer and a practitioner of black magic. During one of his conjurings he raised a familiar to aid him, and he named this familiar Robin Redcap. In Henderson's work, though, he is named Redcap Sly. This particular Redcap was an absolute nightmare. Sir Walter Scott says he lived in a chest. All say he ravaged the lands of his master. In the end, who was the master and who was the servant? William became enchanted by this strange fairy creature, the Redcap promising William a life of plenty. He would be immune to arrows, knives or swords. The only thing that would hold him would be 3 ropes crafted from sifted sand. Eventually the wicked Laird Soulis meets a grisly end. He is captured and held, and then boiled in a cauldron at a place called Ninestane Rig, which is a megalithic stone circle. His familiar, the Redcap, cannot save him. The captors didn't use any sharp weapons. In the legend tells us that Robert the Bruce of Scotland himself called for the death of de Soulis after becoming exasperated by the evil behaviour. So what is the truth? Actually, William de Soulis died at Dumbarton Castle. He had confessed to being part of a 1320 plot against Robert the Bruce, and his payment in forfeit was the castle itself. Levden never mentions Redcap Sly. It is actually Walter Scott that names and shames the goblin creature. However, whatever the truth, let's none of us sleep under the stars in any of those borderland empty castles, just in case. The Dearg Dubh. The tale of the Dearg Dubh, the Red Thirst, is a sad and deadly one. Once a beautiful fair maiden lived in Waterford in Ireland, so beautiful that bards would write of her, and her fairness was sung of far and wide. Her skin was white as the springtime snow, and lips as red as precious rubies, shining in the setting sunlight. This outer beauty was only matched by the utter loveliness and kindness that shone from within the lady. Men came from far and wide to ask for her hand, completely enchanted. The girl fell in love and fell hard, A local farm worker stole her heart, and dreams of him day and night haunted her. And yet her father refused the marriage. Instead, to better himself, he married this beautiful daughter to a cruel and very wealthy man. He was older even than her own father, a clan chief, and his money brought her for his own. This evil man took great joy at treating his young bride cruelly, a psychopath, loving her red blood flowing on pure white skin, and her father, he didn't care. He had money now and property and status. Finally, the young woman's husband locked her in her tower, where she could only dream and hope desperately that her true love would find her and rescue her. Time ticked away, though, and time only told her that there would be no rescue. She decided she could no longer bear to live like this, and so, hiding the tiny amounts of food and water given to her daily, slowly she willed herself to leave this mortal world. It is a sad thing that she achieved her will. Her husband had already found a new wife, though. Now the villagers knew that under this circumstance the body must be treated carefully to prevent any supernatural attacks by her spirit. Folklore and tradition told them that they should take her, bury her, pile stones over her to keep her from wandering, and yet once they saw her, their hearts broke. They just could not do this to the girl they all once loved. They buried her peacefully instead and grieved. Her once true love came to her grave each day, claiming his eternal love for her still, begging her to return. More time passed and her spirit did return, on the first anniversary of her death. But now she was not the beautiful young woman she had been, instead a frightful creature rising as the wind howled. Only the shadow of a memory guided her ghostly footsteps to her father's home. Here her spirit pleaded to be let inside the house, and in shock she was allowed in, allowing her power over her father. She stepped over the threshold, and at that moment sucked all the breath from his body as he slept. Next she took her way to her husband's house, and there the spirit found him, drunk and surrounded by beautiful women. And now she did the same as before, and this time a little extra for good measure. She drained all the blood from his body as well. This false life force gave her new power and strength, and she wandered the roads of Ireland, her intent to entrance young men and lead them to their doom. She would dance for them, in the strange mists trailing all around her, enticing them to come nearer and nearer, her cold arms encircling them as she drained their every last drop of blood from their bodies. Some she would leave barely alive, clinging to the last hope of recovery. The only way to find safety was to gather the rocks of her grave and replace them to hold her down. However, the more blood she took, the more power she gained. Fortunately, as one of the undead, she survived only by instinct. Her true love was forgotten, and this thankfully saved his life. He never became a victim of her insatiable need for blood. On the eve of her death, locals at Waterford would gather where she was buried at Strongbow's Tree. It was believed she could only wander on her death day, so keeping her weighted down on its eve might just keep the area safe. The Blue Men. The Blue Men of the Minch, or storm kelpies, are Scottish creatures that live in the stretch of water between the Scottish mainland and the northern Outer Hebrides, the area of Minch, and as far as Wick to the west. They hunt for unwary sailors and boats in trouble. These creatures look human, but are blue-skinned, able to swim partly out of the water upright, sleeping just below the waves in the still seas, and twisting and diving as a sport during inclement weather. These creatures can conjure storms. As they approach their victims, the ships and boats that are struggling, they will as a group challenge the skipper of the vessel. The chief of the Blue Men, sometimes named Shoni in certain collected folklores, will shout 2 lines of a poem to him. The captain must finish the poem. Should he fail to complete the task, the Blue Men will capsize the boat and claim the lives of the sailors. So where does their legend come from? It is suggested that they could be inspired by the Picti, translating roughly as the painted people, the original inhabitants of Scotland, recorded as painting their skins blue with woad, or maybe they are a memory of spirits of the sea, a faith long forgotten, or perhaps even Viking sailors who would travel with slaves from many different invaded countries, possibly looking strange to such isolated communities, the Vikings waiting out bad weather in this area of the North Sea. To look at, they are said to have long faces, long arms. Some folklore also has them with wings. Their homes are the caves found at the waters around the Shant Isles, a little north of the Isle of Skye, a dangerous piece of water nicknamed the Current of Destruction. Alasdair Alpin MacGregor, folklorist and historian, claimed they were the worst of the storm kelpies, usually a creature seen as horse-like, but in the case of the Blue Men, looking human and hunting in a very localised place, a rarity of belief in a folklore creature. One collected tale told by Gregorson Campbell tells of the capture and killing of a blue man. Sailors caught him as he slept under the waves and tied him on their ship. 2 more of his blue clan followed the ship, shouting to each other as they neared the boat. "Duncan will be 1, Donald will be 2. Will you need another ere you reach the shore?" The captive blue man rose at this and broke every rope that bound him and leaped back into the sea, shouting as he did so, "Duncan's voice I hear, Donald too is near, but no need of helpers, has strong Ian more." And so folklore accepts that these strange water creatures have names as we humans do. And reading tales of the Blue Men also teaches us they are sometimes benevolent to the sailors in distress, helping to keep them safe if treated with care and respect. A libation of ale would be poured into the sea in the hope that they would bring seaweed to the beaches to use as fertiliser for local crops. Samhain, Halloween night, locals would light candles on the shore as a sign of peace between humans and the Blue Men of Minch. The Black Lady of Bradley Woods. In Bradley in Lincolnshire, England, is a ghostly creature known as the Black Lady of Bradley Woods. Those who have seen her say she is young and beautiful, yet dressed all in black, a black cloak and hood, and yet despite her beauty she looks sad and her face is distressed and her eyes full of tears. Although she has never harmed anyone directly, it is a vision of her that terrifies people, a creature used to scare naughty children again into better behaviour, a frightening character that has been seen and spoken of for many, many generations. What is this lady's tragic and frightening tale? Where does it come from? It is told that during the War of the Roses, a war for rule of England between the rulers of what is now Lancashire and Yorkshire, whose opposing colours were the red rose and the white rose, there lived a young family. They were a woodsman and his wife and a little baby boy, and their home could be found at Bradley Woods, a humble cottage, but home. Because of the wars, the husband had to leave to fight, his wife alone with her baby at the cottage. Missing him dreadfully and afraid of his death, she would wander the edge of the trees with her son, watching for her husband, or at least to hear word of his safety. Months passed by, and the army of the enemy crossed the Humber, marching towards Lincoln and towards another battle. The young woman had no idea of this, taking her walk as she did daily, and yet 3 cavalry soldiers found her alone and vulnerable. And as you can imagine, the worst happened. They attacked her and left her for dead, taking the baby as they rode away. And yet the lady recovered. Her heart was crushed though, and her mind destroyed by the evil. Now she still wandered the woodlands, dressed in black and grieving and ashamed, searching for her baby as well as her husband. And then one day she was no more. She had passed. Villagers still saw her though, wandering and searching and crying silently. It is believed by the locals that should you ever go near the woods at Bradley on Christmas Eve and chant 3 times, Black Lady, I've stolen your baby," she will appear, which seems rather cruel. However, be aware, if she does appear, she is full of malice, as she is still looking for vengeance and revenge for all the suffering in her life. Thank you, subscribers and supporters, for all your kind words, views, likes and follows. Some people have asked me how they can support the channel. Well, there are a few ways now. You can look at our merchandise shops where we have all sorts of great things with mine and Mark's art. And now you can even buy me a coffee on Ko-fi, where you can also join as a member of my page and get great principles of Mark's art and folklore things every month as a thank you from us both. I have put all of the links in the description of this episode. And so there we have it, some truly scary characters from fairy folklore. Don't have nightmares. I think I might have to create a less dark episode next time, just to keep the balance. So until next time, dear friends, take the very best of care, brightest of blessings, and do remember, don't play with the fairy folk, or you may end up in one of my folk tales yourself.